so much for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be here with you all. And thank you so much, Professor, for attending and taking precious time out of your schedule. You have been such a great mentor to me over the years. And I am so grateful for this opportunity. And I'm so happy to have everyone here. We wanted to make this a small, very intimate gathering because we will have an interactive discussion and brainstorming session after this talk. So without further ado, I'd like to begin. Yeah, please gather around for the people that are coming in. Great, thank you. There's also seats up here, too. Great, thank you. Okay, is this good? Okay, great. So why this topic? I've had many conversations with Professor Swaminathan as well as my esteemed colleague, Dr. Raman, here at the foundation. It's just part of what we're doing to really future-proof the next generation because, as we all know, there's so many challenges. I'd like to start off with a quote here because this describes the ethos of the future that we're trying to build in terms of bridging the educational divide. And how do we reshape education to really help prepare our youth for the future? If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. Ultimately, it's about building people and empowering the youth to be able to fulfill their potential, regardless of what that is. And that doesn't belong in a cookie-cutter system, but a system in which allows all youth to thrive. So as we all know here, especially those of us that work in development, there are many challenges to what we call the triple bottom line, right? We've heard people, planet, profit. How do we build a sustainable future that benefits everybody? So with people, there's high youth unemployment, there's critical skills gap, there's a lack of empowerment, there's the fear of automation replacing jobs, and a lot of wasted potential. And it's such a tragedy to see so many young people who are hungry to achieve a better future not have the opportunities to do so. In terms of profit, there's misaligned social and financial incentives, unsustainable business models, and that's something that we're really trying to break and to build better business models. As well as the planet, we all know that we're suffering from pressing resource constraints, water, food, climate, pressing global challenges. So how do we fit all of this in? We are working, as the MSSRF is also, with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to look at how do we create solutions out of all of these aforementioned challenges in a way that actually creates economic livelihood, educates and empowers the youth, and creates a sustainable pathway forward. So this is where we go to addressing the problem, the skills gap of India's next generation. And this is something that is recurring no matter what country we're working in. And we've worked across so many different countries. And the key is there's high uncertainty for the future amongst populations, like I mentioned earlier. Critical skills gap for young people, especially the rural-urban divide. And I know that's something that the foundation here is the skills gap of India's next generation, right? So we're using entrepreneurship as a tool, not just for everyone to create a business, but it's a three-pronged approach. Entrepreneurship as education and empowerment, because the skills that you acquire are so important. Entrepreneurship as livelihood, because there's not enough jobs and there's so much competition. So how do we help more young people, regardless of background or socioeconomic status or credentials, achieve a better livelihood for themselves and create their own pathway? And how do we, in a larger ecosystem, translate all of this into economic development? So, as we were talking this past week, as I've spent here, and this is, Chennai is like a second home to me now. This is my, my fifth visit in a few months, about 9 months. And Professor and I were having a conversation about the big idea. And we're thinking about the 100 initiative. And this is a big idea that later I'd love for all of you to have input on, because it takes everyone to dream and build this. 100 new ideas and solutions for 100 critical challenges by 100 youth entrepreneurs for the next 100 years of Indian agriculture. And why agriculture? Because it is the fundamental primary industry and it affects so many others. And there's so many opportunities to both make a difference to the planet as well as people's pocketbooks. One of the main areas that we brainstormed about is the focus on the second-tier colleges. Like I mentioned, the rural areas where they lack resources, but they have a concentrated population of young people who have the talent and the drive. And so there's a significant population of under-resourced and underutilized segment of entrepreneurs that can be developed. And we're trying to address some of the main issues of why early-stage businesses fail. So we're creating win-win-win ecosystems and killing many birds with one stone. And how do we do that? You can't do it alone. As Dr. Rahman always hears me say, we're trying to break people out of their silos. It takes a whole village, and in real life, it takes a whole ecosystem to help develop the youth. Advisors, vendors, investors, partners, experts. And we see ourselves as the venture engine, that first gear that turns all of the gears. We need to start, just like in Mother Nature, where you have to, it takes a while to grow the seed to bear fruit, right? Everybody wants to harvest the fruit, but nobody wants to get their hands dirty in the soil to actually get that seed to take root. But it's so important, that foundation, which is why we really believe in creating that incubating environment. From a micro level with individual student skills gaps to the macro level where we're preparing the whole, the whole ecosystem. Also to empower them with the tools and resources, create viable real-life applications for their journeys, whether it's means of starting a business, means of getting a secure job, and also technological solutions to help them scale and actually create, make agriculture attractive to young people. Because right now with rural flight and a lot of other issues, young people, as we all know, are not as interested in agriculture because there's a misperception that, oh, agriculture is backbreaking labor, agriculture is not sexy, right? And it is something that is very important for us to change that perception. So how do we do that? The Hungry platform takes principles of nature, and this is through years and years of trial and iteration and actual operations on the ground, getting the data, working with entrepreneurs, young people from grade school all the way through postgraduate in over 30 countries to see what works, what doesn't. And we consider ourselves a lab without borders, the Hungry Lab, where we believe anyone who is hungry to achieve a brighter future for themselves has the ability to do so. And so it's so important in terms of the knowledge transfer to create an environment that allows risk-taking, but calculated risk-taking and learning best practices. So we cannot be in silos because it takes so much communication to make it happen. So the platform is very simple. Are you hungry? Let's eat. Educate, act, transform. And it requires these fundamental elements that we've proven over the years working in concert with each other. We need to have a Launchpad. Now this Launchpad for the youth includes development, professional and personal, training, curating opportunities, resources, advisory, and mentorship. They need the hand-holding. There's so many traditional education programs that teach you, what to learn, but they don't really teach you how to learn, and that's so important. It's that ongoing hand-holding that they need. The technology, in this way, it allows us to really gather the data, and we've been spending a lot of time building the algorithms as well as the smart matching tools to pair youth, each individual youth, with the best supportive resources that works with them. This also allows us to bring in the startup community because the startup community also has a lot of innovative solutions, but they're not aware how to apply it to solve greater problems, right? I always say, I could care less about the next food delivery app. Show me how we can use it to help deliver pharmaceuticals to the rural villages, right? There's a lot of technologies that can be leveraged if we know how to communicate and work with the people that are developing them. So again, it requires breaking out of the silos. And the larger ecosystem, because it takes many stakeholders, and until we actually create win-win-win solutions for all of the stakeholders in the system, we're not going to have long-term participation. So we need to remove friction for partnerships and actually involve a critical missing element, which are the investors. The investors are so critical. I was actually working with a seed venture investment incubation platform in Mumbai. And they actually said, we're interested in investing in ag tech platforms, but this is a new space for us. We are not familiar with this space, but we also don't know where the opportunities are because we don't know enough. Well, the people in this room know, right? We need to increase that communication to provide a pipeline and build that. And this is where we need to start. It's the roots. It's hard work, it takes a while, but luckily now, because we have already spent years of getting this data and the methodology, we're now ready to deploy it to the world. And we work as a feeder pipeline and create opportunities for young people, whether they want to create a startup for investors or their own businesses. We need to create strong roots. And so we need to encompass holistic development with a roadmap and personalized pathways. That's what's so important. Okay. Okay. This is just some examples of what we've been doing already this past year in Singapore. I've designed the curriculum for various schools, including the National University of Singapore, in terms of their scientific innovation research program. Some mentorship programs there, as well as Ngee Polytechnic with their sandbox incubation. We've designed some modules there that I've designed and delivered. And so regardless of whatever country, if it's India, if it's Singapore, there's a lot of innovative ideas. There's a lot of driven young people willing to work on them. They need help to understand how to put all the pieces together. And that's where we come in. So over the past few years, we've been working across 18 industries, over 10 countries. So proud to say that we have over 40% of our community are females, which is a much higher percentage than the traditional industries. And over 1,000 plus attendees just this past year alone in our events that we're trying to do to create public awareness. The public is so important because the public is another missing element that often gets forgotten when we're doing our research or we're in the field. The consumer is the missing part of that equation because when we have these ideas, but there's so many that don't get taken from the lab or the field to the market, and it's the consumers that drive that demand. So that's the critical link to create that pathway from lab and field to the market, where the consumers can actually have access, where we can make a bigger impact. So through all of this now, the methodology, the platform, the trial and errors, the programs, we're now launching a global school for the future. And this is where we want to create opportunities for all youth, regardless of where they are. Building a brighter future for what I like to call the 6 S's. Students, because they're the next generation of leaders. Startups, because they're the innovators and change makers. SMEs, because they're still the #1 job engine in most countries. Social enterprise, because they bridge cause and solution. Scientists, because like I said, we need more innovation to get taken from lab to market. And second chapters, people who have spent a long time, a long career in the corporate world, have a particular skill set, and now in their next chapter of their life, they want to give back. And we also work with NGOs and corporates, because there's a lot of training that's involved with that. So this is a very long slide, but intentionally it's focusing on how do we look from the top level and combine it with the micro level details. How do we take all of these S's, right, all of these various components, people who are trying to build a resilient future, and get down to what I call the soil, right, the self. And so to future-proof, we need to start with creating resilient individuals. And every individual is different. So what we spent these past few years doing is actually understand and create the programs that will help lay the foundation that helps the individuals personally and professionally develop from a young age while aligning it with their purpose. And how many of you have heard the term ikigai? Yeah. So ikigai is essentially the bliss point. It's a Japanese term for essentially your reason of being, right? Everyone has their own unique mission in life. And if we can help more youth discover their ikigai, which is the bliss point of what you love to do, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at, then we're going to help unleash so much more potential. Okay. This is what I call the 6 Ps to maximize youth talents. And essentially, we're taking the concept of ikigai and creating a real-world program that youth can go into and grow. So the 6 Ps is unlock your purpose, ignite your passion, unleash your potential, identify your means for profit because it cannot be sustainable if you're not making a living, create your pathway for impact, and build your pipeline for growth. That's really important. We found that this methodology, these 6 Ps, work on an individual level as well as an organization level, right? Organizations, especially, I do a lot of training for NGOs to teach them how to think like a business, right? Because oftentimes the biggest challenge is getting continuous funding. How do we build a pipeline for organic funding, to generate organic funding opportunities, right? That's something that's very critical. So this also works for organizations as well. So this is actually at a school not far from here, about 2 hours away, where I did a pilot seminar on confidence building as one of the critical skills that was identified by that school regarding their students. These are rural, mostly underprivileged youth, and even if they want to, let's say, start their own business or get a job, many of them lack those critical skills. So what we're trying to do is even the playing field. I've created in this whole system, these are all algorithms that we've developed to ultimately for the AI that we're building for software. So at the end of the day, all youth can access this on their app, on their phone. But so I've broken it down for you so in easy to remember acronyms and taking complex problems and complex concepts and breaking them down into very simple, easy to remember phrases. So laying down the laws for youth development. What we found is because we're trying to complement and cover the gaps of what traditional schools are not teaching, we need to create opportunities for leadership, achievement, wellness, and their story. Because every youth has their own story, and we need to unlock that to unleash everyone's individual potential. Our natural ecosystem, but it is what starts everything, right? So to do this, how do we do this in real life? We need to start with the soil. Soil is an acronym, okay? Just like in Mother Nature. So I like to say everything I knew about building business ecosystems and future-proofing youth, I learned from Mother Nature, collecting soil samples in the Kenyan rainforest. So, okay, S is for stakeholders, right? It takes a village. How do you build the right support structure? Every stakeholder in your ecosystem, whether it's a donor, whether it's an investor, whether it's a customer, right? Whether it's you, your employees, they all have their own unique problems. For you to be that centralized solution that everyone wants to buy into, you need to be able to create solutions for every single stakeholder's problems. And we've created a mapping exercise that I can show you later as an example how to teach young people to do that, to think holistically. It requires oxygen, that's the O. How do you acquire the breathing room and resources to take risks, fail forward, and learn and grow? Intelligence. How do you gather the right information, the research, the knowledge, and metrics, customized to guiding your own path to turn your idea into reality? And leadership. How do you inspire awareness and action to your vision, right? You can have an idea, but if you're not communicating it in the right way and inspiring others, you won't be able to make a bigger impact. Once we have the soil, let's map the seed. MAP is an acronym of mindset, application, and process. In order to be able to help young people prepare themselves for a volatile future and to future-proof themselves for whatever may come, then they need to have the right mindset. A mindset of growth, a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. They need to apply what they learn, right? They need to be shown how to learn, not just learn and memorize from a textbook. And they need to have a process in how to do so, to apply it in real life. And we need to create the seeds for an inclusive future by bridging many divides. Social divides, economic, educational, and digital. How do we actually measure and overcome the gaps? We need to nurture the seed. And in this part, we need structure, we need to empower, we need efficacy, and we need data. You can't improve what you don't measure, right? And from an individual level, we need to have the structure, we need to empower the individual, we need to overcome inefficiencies, and we need to measure the data. But on a macro level too, whether we're talking about an organization or a larger community ecosystem, all of this applies. So all of these methodologies can be scaled down and scaled up. Now, once you have your seed planted in the soil, you need to grow strong roots, right? This is very important because if you can't grow strong roots, you cannot allow the plant to grow strong and bear fruit, right? The R is for resilience. Okay, how do we actually build true resilience? We hear that term being tossed around a lot, but for an unpredictable future, how do we leverage our resources at hand? And so this is what we're doing and working with the youth to teach them how to use force multipliers to help them make the most when resources are scarce. How do we create opportunities? How do we help the youth actually identify and recognize and prioritize opportunities for them, even if they might not see it at first? This is very critical because there's so many opportunities that are wasted. And how do you actually take that opportunity and turn it to something that can help them make a living, that offering, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's a job, right? And how do we help them jumpstart the process to deploy that? Trajectory. How do you project, manage, and track your pathway? And that's really critical because when we can help them create their own pathway, they're much more likely to take ownership of it and be an owner of their future success. And how do we develop strategies for the youth? And how do we show them how to do it themselves? All of this, we need to show them how. So earlier you heard me mention, are you hungry? Let's eat. Educate, act, transform, okay? But it's not enough. Eat is just to survive. We don't want to just survive, we want to thrive. So this is an Onam Sadhya. Professor Swaminathan's from Kerala. And so as you see, the banana leaf, it's a feast, right? And I like to make an analogy to the banana leaf because it's such a beautiful, thing because you have so many different types of ingredients on there, right? And they all taste differently by themselves, but when you put them together, they make a beautiful feast. And that's what we want to do with all youth, no matter what background. They all come from different places, different talents, different paths. But if we can create an ecosystem which everyone can come together and make a brilliant feast, that's essentially what our mission is, right? But it starts from empowering individuals first, and then putting all the pieces together in a big picture, breaking the silos, creating the structure and the future pathway to do so. So now we have to thrive. We need to feast for the future. And FEAST is an acronym to fully help future-proof, okay? We need a forecast. Just like in Mother Nature, right? Your seed has to be exposed to a lot of elements, bad weather, right? A lot of different risks. Similarly, also in real life. So we need to help the youth understand and prepare and be able to adapt to whatever volatility comes their way. And We need to help them evolve because there's nothing certain except uncertainty and changing times. So how do we help them actually continue their lifelong learning and be able to capitalize and leverage their talents for whatever the job market may need? And how do we accelerate them? Ultimately, if they're going to need funding for their startup or funding for their project or additional partners, how do we help accelerate that process and help them increase their momentum? And how do we sustain it in a way that is both economically, environmentally sustainable? And how do we help them transcend to the next level? Because it's an ongoing journey. It doesn't just stop, right? The future will always be coming, right? And so it's an ongoing dynamic process. So essentially, that's just a very small summary of the tools, the processes, the methodologies that we've developed through lots of on-the-ground work. And now we've taken a lot of these complicated, complex things that we've put, for example, into our algorithms and made it very, very simple for young people across various types of programs, curriculums, from grade school all the way through postgraduate, as well as on the organizational level, training NGOs and corporates and startups. And essentially, if you formulate the futures, it's easy to remember the building blocks, the 5 E's, right? Your vision, your value, your vitality, your volatility, and the visibility, right? This, if you can remember these 5 elements, then this process, what we found, is very, very helpful to planning that. Okay, and this is just, I can save this slides for you guys as well, right? Nobody operates in a silo. Everybody operates as part of a larger ecosystem. You got your individuals, your teams, your organization, your industry, and your ecosystem. So to plan, how do you actually forecast and anticipate all of these various factors? So different soils grow different seeds grow different fruits, right? But it takes, we need all different kinds of fruits. And what this is designed to do is to help all different kinds of seeds grow. And what part of the public awareness that we're doing, this is an example of a session that we did in Mumbai on education technology and bringing in all various stakeholders, from investors to entrepreneurs to consultants to experts. And this is how we're doing a lot of these, implying them in real life. This is what we did in December as part of our flagship Startups to Save the World Roundtable series, where we're doing in various cities around the world. And this is in Chennai, and we had, and some people from the December session are actually here in the room as well. So, and I'd like to thank everybody for being such a big part of this and coming, because we have a cross-section of academia, scientists, schools, NGOs, entrepreneurs, and investors all coming together. And we had our first brainstorming session on creating an ag tech incubation system for Tamil Nadu. And this is an example of a young person that we're actually, this is a case study of how we're helping him create a viable business, grow it, connect with investors, and communicate it and create win-win-win solutions for all the stakeholders in this business. This is in clean tech. Vikesh Sharma is the founder and CEO of Power Mitra, and he is creating and focusing on solar energy and providing solar products for the smaller segment of the market, which is very large and previously ignored. And this is a video, but it's rather long, so I can create a link so you guys can access it later. But this is essentially what we helped Vic learn how to do, and he's giving an example here of the mapping exercise I mentioned earlier. All the stakeholders in your ecosystem, what problems they're facing, what is the solution that Power Mitra is providing each one of them, what is the value that each stakeholder is deriving from Power Mitra, And what does that benefit look like, and how do you actually measure it as a key performance indicator? When we do this, we can actually increase the perception of how Power Mitra is perceived across all of these stakeholders and increase their value proposition. And this actually helps provide a lot of clarity in terms of the exact kind of product and that they're creating across the entire ecosystem. And this incentivizes all of the stakeholders to participate in Power Mitra's platform because they are able to see exactly the solution and the benefit that they are deriving from Power Mitra's solution, which in turn translates to more money saved for them, more money made for Vikesh, and everybody wins, as well as the environment, because now we're reducing the carbon footprint. So, ultimately, what do you want to harvest? How do you start with your soil? How do you nurture your seed? How do you cultivate your ecosystem? And what are you hungry for? These are questions that everybody, all youth are hungry for something. Everyone is hungry for something, right? But how do we actually take what we're hungry for and turn it into reality? As we look ahead into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. And this is what we want to create, is to create the next generation of leaders. And thank you very much. I'm available for questions. I don't know if we want to take a break before we go to the brainstorming session, but I'd like to, which will be about what I mentioned earlier, the 100 initiative. 100 solutions for 100 critical challenges by 100 youth entrepreneurs for the next 100 years of Indian agriculture. Great. Thank you very much.